Welcome to Authentically Woman, a sanctuary dedicated to empowering women. We are a faith based healing circle focused on changing perspectives and inspiring healing through authenticity and vulnerability. Join us in this journey of empowerment and healing. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Tinashe Mujera. I'm an author, I'm a marketplace professional, and I'm a woman of God. I am a representation of tested faith. I represent my healed wounds that left ugly scars. This is the Faith in Action podcast that has been created to help you find the journey to your true self through conversations and lessons shared. Hello, good day, good morning, good evening to all the Faith in Action podcast listeners and watchers, depending on which side of the world you are joining us from. I hope you can see me. For those that are watching, you can see me clearly and properly. Um, Super excited to have you again join us on yet another exciting episode of Faith in Action. Faith in Action, indeed. We have a beautiful and inspiring guest, as always. You know, we don't miss when it comes to that. By the way, I actually didn't know, and I actually didn't realize that as October is Mental Health Awareness Month, it is also they call it uh, uh, um, World Menopause Awareness Month. Interesting. So, on the platform today, as a guest, we have somebody who is a representative, or rather an activist, of perimenopause, or premature menopause, something I had never had before. And I bumped into her at one of these big events where she was speaking, and I was completely awed by the wisdom and the knowledge that she was bringing, particularly to our women. And so I'm excited tonight because we're going to be gleaning from that kind of wisdom. Before I introduce her, I want to remind you about Authentically Woman, of course, our healing circle for women, particularly. If you haven't followed us on Instagram, do yourself a favor, follow us on our handle, Instagram handle, Authentically Woman. We are also on Facebook as Authentically Woman, not women, as most of you would say, but woman. So, yes, please, Authentically Woman. So do join us and do follow us on Instagram and also on Facebook. We are found there. It's important that you join a circle of women who are true, who are authentic, who can share their experiences from a place of truth to bring healing, transformation, change that aligns you to your purpose. And I encourage you, if you haven't, to hope on to that. Now, back to the episode, Faith in Action. I am going to try and read her bio to the best of my abilities, her journey rather. Um, and I'll read a little bit about it, and then she'll share as she joins the platform. Her name is Xolisile Madlala. She's a powerful advocate for menopause awareness in the workplace, particularly as she shares a story of navigating premature menopause in her early 30s, guys, while working as a flight attendant. What began as a confusing and isolating experience soon became a transformative journey, leading her to champion conversations that shed light on the impact of menopause on women's personal and professional lives. That's just a little bit of a glimpse into what she represents. And without wasting much time, please help me to welcome Xolisile Madlala to the Faith in Action podcast. Xoli, welcome to the Faith in Action podcast.
Ooh, good evening. Thank you so very much for that wonderful introduction. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you, sis. Let me just fix my camera. Sorry about that. There we go. Should be fine now. Good to have you. Thank you for joining us on the Faith in Action podcast. I could not wait to have you join us because I really want to tap into the wisdom you carry and this assignment that you carry and just to hear, all about it, particularly what you write in your book and also your journey and to learn from it. I was telling the listeners that I met you at an event. You only spoke for 5 minutes or 10, was it? But in that 5, 10 minutes, goodness me, I started feeling all the symptoms. I'm like, what's going on here? I think there's something wrong with me. And so we needed to have you on the platform so you can share on this beautiful topic. Can you just tell us more about who Xolisile Madlala is? I know I've introduced a bit, but please tell us who you are, what you represent, what makes you tick, what you love. We just want to know you.
Ooh, okay. Xolisile is originally from Pietermaritzburg in KwaZulu-Natal. I am the eldest in my family. I have a sister. We've got a 13-year gap. She came when I was convinced that I was the only child, and then suddenly my mom was like pregnant. I came back from school holidays. I used to go to boarding school, and then she is on the time is here. And I'm like, why was not I not consulted about this big decision? But yeah, she's such an amazing sister. We've got a great relationship, and I'm a lover of life. I love adventure. I love authentic conversations. I love marking off. You will see this conversation. You better brace yourself. It's going to go in all directions, and I'm going to answer to the best of my truth because we live in a world that is so consumed with being so PR correct, with showing perfection. And I think that's why my name on Instagram is Mask Off with Xoli. I believe that we should mask off in this journey of life.
Mm.
I love nature. Hiking is one of my favorite things to do. I love food. And I love doing nothing because I always say that doing nothing is still doing something. And I love praise and worship. I do not have a good singing voice, but put on the music or let the worship get on, and you shall see me just singing my lungs out. I am very spiritual, and I love God. And I always say that in every decision that I make, in every journey that I walk, He's always there with me.
Amazing. It's beautiful, sis. Wow. What a beautiful way to unpack who you are. Thank you for sharing that with us. And we're looking forward to the conversation. Like you say, brace yourself. Oh, I am bracing myself. I don't know about you, Faith in Action podcast listeners and watchers. I'm sure they are busy doing the same. Talk to us about October being World Menopause Awareness Month and the 18th of October being World Menopause Day. How so timely that we get you in October where this resonates or aligns with these particular dates. I can't believe. What is it that we must look forward to, and why is it important to speak about menopause in this particular month?
Okay. With World Menopause Awareness Month, I think it's a good thing to have on the calendar because already menopause is not getting any spotlight. So at least with October, we know that all the interested parties or people that work in the space then can really push. And especially here in South Africa, I mean, already we've got Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. Then we've got the mental health awareness. And all these three, including menopause, are actually tied together. And if you allow me to say why I mean that, some women will go to medically induced menopause. For example, they have breast cancer, and then they need to do some treatments, whether it's chemotherapy or radiation, and then it leads them to medically induced menopause. And then some of the symptoms of menopause also are not just the physical ones that we normally speak about, whether your hot flashes, the weight gain, your hair falling, thinning, but then there's the psychological symptoms of menopause, whether it's anxiety, panic attacks, all the way to depression. So having these three observed at the same time is one of my biggest dreams, to just have all our organizations, whether it's corporates, whether it's the churches, whether it's just the general public, knowing that these three are observed in the same way in October.
Wow, sis. Thank you for sharing that and putting it all together for us. I would never, in my wildest, even in my thoughts, think that the three can be tied into each other or tied together like that. So, what a beautiful way to put it across, particularly to our audience that is also listening. And perhaps there is someone who is experiencing menopause or some of what we'll be discussing and unpacking today. And to hear that because October is Mental Health Awareness Month, it's also Breast Screening Month, and it is also World Menopause Awareness Month, and the three come together. Beautiful. Golly, take us back to that day of realization. You said in your early 30s.
Yeah.
Early 30s? I cannot
Yeah.
believe. Where you mentioned that you realized that you were actually getting into what we call, I think, premature menopause. You call it perimenopause. We're also going to ask you to unpack all of these terms for us because, wow, we don't understand them. But take us back to that place of realization. What happened? What did you feel? What were the symptoms? What was going on in your mind, your body, your spirit, everything, your emotions, and everything to do with that?
Okay. The realization, I always say that it was years in the making, because I struggled and lived with the symptoms for years, almost 8 years, not being aware what was going on, because I never knew that menopause could happen before time. So I used to look at the symptoms in isolation. I always say that, for example, when I started being lactose intolerant, I used to think that maybe it's the food that I've eaten, it was not prepared properly, wherever I had gotten it from. When I struggled with insomnia, I used to put it down to my job because I was working as a flight attendant. So I would think that is the effects of the time changes on my body, hot flashes
Mm,
happening, and I was like, I don't know why I'm suddenly feeling so hot out of the blue, but I just would find ways of coexisting with the symptoms. It is only when
mm,
I struggled with the psychological symptoms that I eventually decided, and when I say decided, it's not just me. I always say that it is God that actually gave me that
mm,
epiphany to say that, you know what you've been going through all of these years is not right. It is all pointing to something seriously wrong. You need to backtrack, recall as many of these symptoms, and then look it up on the internet to see what it could be pointing to, because
mm,
in my own understanding, I was not going to make the connection that I was going into premature menopause. So after having that epiphany and then Googling, and then I saw that possibly I was into premature menopause. But because when you go into menopause before the ages of 45, you cannot just self-diagnose or conclude that it is menopause. You need to go for a consultation, do the necessary tests, which are called like the FSH test and the LH test. Then they can confirm that indeed it is menopause, because some of these symptoms, they also can present for something else, whether maybe
mm,
it's thyroid, it can be things like your TB or diabetes. So
mm,
one needs to do those tests to know for a fact. So that is how I eventually knew what was happening. But for a number of years, I was just coasting along, being a
mm.
shell of my former self, not knowing what was going on.
Sure. That is quite interesting and also said at the same time because I want to understand at that age who were you able to tell anybody and also talking about your faith and how God brought that to light. I mean, and for a number of times and in a number of situations there are certain situations which we almost want to pray against and not actually unpack, but we also almost want to just cover up and not want to get into the wound and dress it up first and remove whatever it is we must remove and put in the betadine and then cover afterwards for the healing to take place. How was that for you? Did you have anyone around you to share the experience with? Did you just keep it to yourself? How did you navigate through?
Okay. Um, Before knowing what was happening, it was just me going through everything solo because I could not even put it into words what was going on. But the moment I knew what was happening, I remember that day, it was April 2016. I got onto Facebook because I already knew that I had gone into premature menopause, and I just put a meme that was written, perimenopause can suck it. And from that day onwards, that's when I started just talking about menopause. And at first, obviously, I was talking to myself. Normally, I've got an audience on Facebook. We engage with my friends. But because I came with, I guess, a subject that they were not clued up about, they did not know what to say. So it was met with almost silence. No interactions except for three emoticons. There was that. But I continued posting about my journey, about my experience, because I do not believe in suffering in silence. That's one thing
Mm,
that has never been a thing for me.
alrighty. Oh, geez, we just had to change cameras right there, and Tolly had to switch from a phone to a laptop because we had a technical glitch. But you know how what we believe on the Faith in Action podcast. No weapon fashioned against us prospers. We continue because the mission must be accomplished. And so she's back, and we're going to continue the conversation really. So, Tolly, I was asking you, I mean, in that particular moment in your early 30s, you're feeling all of these things. You said God gave you that moment to say, get back to the symptoms, go unpack what's been happening to you. And
Yes.
I asked to say, did you have anybody to share this with, to talk to? Because normally in the church we want to cover up these things with just prayer, or it's almost like putting a bandage, or putting a plaster or whatever on a wound that's not been dressed and cleaned properly. And so we want you to take us through that moment. If you had anyone around you, how did you say it? Because this is such an unexpected thing happening to you emotionally, I'm sure physically as well, and mentally. Take us through that, please.
I always say that it was a very lonely journey at first, very, very lonely. And that is why I end up using my social media platforms, just looking for relatability, seeing who
Mm,
else was going through or had gone through what I was going through. Because at that time, I mean, I felt like I was the only one. I tried to get the conversations going, even with my colleagues at work, and you could see that window going down, that we don't speak about those things.
mm,
And I started using then my Facebook timeline as an outlet to just share my experience, because I think I mentioned earlier that I do not believe in suffering in silence. And
mm,
I also believe that there's so much power in masking off, because when we mask off and share our experiences, we give other people that are going through the same thing that permission to remove their masks. And before you know it, we have formed that network.
yeah.
So as I continued posting on Facebook, people started DMing me in terms of adding their own experiences or whatever, WhatsApping me, but people were not comfortable with speaking openly. And I kind of understood, because maybe we live in a generation where people are worried about screenshots being taken and ending up in different places, so they were not comfortable with talking. But as time progressed, then people started getting comfortable enough to raise their hands and say that actually I am going through this. I went through this. This is where I am. This is what is helping me. But the first group that I started with was a few ladies, and we started a WhatsApp group, and we called ourselves Black Roses. Because black roses are deemed to be these resilient flowers and all of that. And then at church also, because that was still in 2016, I started just asking around that how does church view and navigate or give support when it comes to this phase of life? Yet again,
Mm,
I was not really met with much response. It was one of those crickets things.
mm,
Silence, silence, silence from that place of we do not know anything about this. And fast track, my friends started feeling bad because the more they heard about my journey and my experiences, especially before knowing what was happening, they were like, how did we miss all of these changes that we're going through? Because I really lost so much weight. Like in my book, I even have like some images there. And every time I look at one of the photos, I was so skeletal. Like I had lost so much weight. I was bones. But because when you're in a thing, sometimes you do not see yourself. And
Mm.
because of the time changes also, I'll be home in summer, and my friends, we're not spending time together, and I'm home, I'm like I'm closing myself socially. They could not see the things. And when I'll be traveling, sometimes I'm covered up, so people feel like, how did this thing happen? And nobody was able to pick it up.
Mm.
Socially, I cut out myself, as I said so many times. I stopped going to gym. I stopped going hiking. I just wanted to stay home in bed if I did not have to go to work. I stopped eating. Just the thought of getting out of bed was a lot for me. The thought of taking a bath sometimes was just too much. I just wanted to stay in bed with my thoughts. And as I said, that they also started becoming dark also during that time. And by the time people find out, I think I was also faring a bit better. And that's when they started rallying around me in terms of being asking, what kind of support can we give you now? Now that we know what you are going through, do we speak about this openly? Can we crack jokes about this? Is it something that you feel like, no, we don't joke about it? But it was great to finally be able to get the support system from them. Even my family, as I said, that I'm from KZN, so they were not really part of this journey much. My mom only witnessed my hot flashes one December when she was visiting. But because I was still younger than the expected age of menopause, she was asking like the typical Black moms would
Mm.
think, when was the last time you cleaned your system, or keeping young, or to detox your tati castor oil, or all of that. And and it speaks again to that nobody knows much about premature menopause, or nobody speaks much about it. We always say menopause is supposed to happen at a certain age. Hence, even with her, she could not connect the dots. And worse, she had not gone into it. I went into it before her. Hence,
Wow.
then she also said that when I knew what was happening, and she said to me, I can do my best to support you, but I do not fully get what you're going through.
That's right. And I think the only person that can get this is the person that is going through it. And it's difficult to explain to anybody else because when we look at you, we are seeing somebody who's fine, and it's only you who's feeling
Yeah.
the hot flashes and the other symptoms going on on the inside of you. Now, Polly, I want you to just take a step back and define these three for us because we can continue with the conversation, but it will help if you can shed light on the differences between perimenopause, premature menopause, and menopause itself. What are the differences in those three?
Okay. I'm going to explain this in the simplest forms, not in the medical jargon, so that everybody is able to
Yes.
follow through. I always say that when a girl is born, she hits puberty at some point, and that's when, if she was to have sex, she will fall pregnant because her eggs have matured, and now she also goes on her periods. And then she goes through life, whether she will have children, whether she will fall pregnant. But then there is this last phase of her reproductive journey, which is guaranteed if she lives long enough, which is called menopause. And that's when her reproductive years come into an end, meaning that her periods are eventually going to stop completely. And that if she has sex, she is no longer going to fall pregnant naturally. And then that is menopause. And the journey that is leading to this stop of the periods happening, it is called perimenopause. And this is the journey that most women struggle with because normally they're still getting their periods. So when these symptoms start presenting, they normally miss them because they are quick to put them off as one thing or another, the way that I said in my case. For example,
Yeah.
a woman is still getting her periods, but suddenly she's struggling with gum issues. She has to continuously go to the dentist, and she's not making any connection to think that she could be transitioning into menopause. You find someone, their hair is falling off, their hair is thinning, and because the periods are still regular, they are not making any connections. I mean, sometimes women are still actually falling pregnant, but they also in perimenopause. They're struggling with dry skin. They keep blaming the skincare regime that they are using. Others, they have things like your changes in body odor. They change their roll-on or the fragrance because, yet again, nobody talks about these things. Achy joints, ringing in the ears. And this can especially be tricky for us African Black people because, I mean, in the African context, ringing in the ears, for some people, it can mean that they've got a calling. So if they do not know that it is tinnitus that they're going through, they can end up actually being taken for initiation because they've got a calling when they do not have a calling. The list of the symptoms is over 100 right now. Back then, there used to be 12 because it was a subject that was not spoken about. And then, as more women started speaking about their menopause and perimenopause transition, the list went to 34. And then now we are sitting at over 100 because, as you can imagine, there's so many women in the world with different genetic makeup. So it's not going to be a linear transition. Hence, some women, when they getting the hot flashes, they don't think that anything is happening. Some women actually get chills, they get cold. We speak about some women getting low libido. Some women, their libido goes up. So it is very important that we know as many of these symptoms as possible so that we do not miss these changes just because we did not get what we were expecting. As I said, the symptoms are either physical, emotional, or psychological. So it is important that women pay attention even into maybe things like their mood swings. Suddenly they feel like they're more moody, they are irritable. Others, they get this rage that they cannot explain. One thing, they're ready to fly off the handle. And others, even in my case, they hit depression, which is one of the things that really made me to go seek help. And then the normal ages of menopause is from the ages of 45 to 55, 51 being the most common age. And then the perimenopause, the transition itself to menopause, it can take anything from a few years to 7 years to 10 years, for some women up to 14 years. So if you were to do the maths, then if a woman was to hit menopause at 45 and then their transition was 10 years, then it's a thing to say that women can transition from the ages of 35, from the ages of 30. Hence, it's important for us to know. And in my case, then I started transitioning possibly much, much earlier, because if I hit premature menopause at 38, and then my transition could have started even as early as in the late 20s, but I was not aware because my periods were regular. And the youngest case of premature menopause that is known, the girl was 13 going on 14, her periods just stopped. She was from the UK, Annabelle. I always say that her case is so interesting because then she did all the tests to find out what could have caused this to happen. No reason was found. And then here in South Africa, the youngest case, because I always say that it's important that we also use South African stats, South African stories, so that we relate better. She was 16, and I got this from a conversation with one of the gynecologists that I once hosted a live with, because I always make sure that I get as many diverse stories to bring awareness to say that this is an important conversation to have. And it's a conversation for all age groups, because what if your teenager was going to be that one in 100,000 that happens to go into premature menopause in their teenhood? So I've mentioned what menopause is, the cessation of the periods, and a woman needs to have gone through for 12 months without getting a period for her to be deemed to have reached natural menopause. If this irregularity is meaning that a woman hasn't seen her periods for 6 months, then she can't say that she's reached menopause, because that's another misconception that women go through. They will think that, oh no, I've reversed my menopause when a period comes back after 6 months. They have not reversed menopause because they have not gone through 12 months straight without a period. 11 months, you still have not reached menopause. It needs to be that full 12 months. And for women that are on the loop, or that do not get regular periods, it is important that they know as many of the symptoms, because then they cannot use their periods as their yardstick or their tracker to check as are they perimenopausal or what is going on. And then after then, a woman that has reached menopause, then they are in postmenopause, and that's where they're going to be now for the rest of their lives. So it's perimenopause, the transition, then it's menopause, which is that 12-month period. Then on the other side, then is postmenopause. And then, as I said, that if menopause happens from the ages of 40 to 44, it is called early menopause. Then anything that is younger than 40 is premature menopause. And then, as we mentioned, that there's things like your breast cancer that can happen, and then it leads a woman into a medically induced menopause due to the treatments, whether it's the chemotherapy or the radiation. Or we're living in a days also, in days where women are having various conditions, whether it's your cysts, your fibroids, endometriosis, and they end up sometimes having to do certain processes or procedures that lead them to surgically induced menopause. So those are the terminologies that are linked to menopause.
Goodness gracious. That
Overwhelmed.
is so deep. Overwhelming, Toli, I must say. I'm listening and I'm trying to think of my own life and my family and my sisters and everybody around me. And it's so alarming and but also very informative and good to know and learn from. I'm particularly touched by this young girl, Annabelle, 13 to 14, and she already got into menopause. Tell us the effects of menopause on particularly early menopause or premature menopause on fertility, and if you can also tie your own story into that and just let us know how that was for you, if you've walked that journey, and for others, if you've helped some women, which I believe you've been helping a lot of women who might have been going through a similar. So, fertility and menopause or premature menopause.
Okay. Infertility, indeed, it is part of premature menopause, because your chances of falling pregnant naturally are out of the window. So in my case, when it happened, my gynae had to have a conversation with me, and I do touch on in detail in the book how that consultation went about. Firstly, she asked me if I wanted to have children, and I always say that fortunately for me, when I hit 30, I had conversations with myself whether I wanted to have children or not. And the answer was no, I did not want to have my own children. So when I explained to him or responded to him that no, I did not want to have children, then he further said that if I had wanted to have children, then we were going to have to speak about the other options that I had available for me, whether I could go the route of using my sister's eggs to
Mm.
conceive, or look at
Yeah.
things like IVF, or look at adoption and or surrogacy. And after the consultation, I always say that walking back to my car, I was a zombie, because obviously of how the conversation had gone, and also knowing that yet again, our lives are not really in our hands. We can make our own plans and think that some certain decisions are up to us. But when you have that freedom of choice taken away from you, it does something. I've always known that I was never going to change my mind and say that I
Yeah.
want to have children. But at the same time, I always thought that it's my decision, it's my body, it's my choice. So now when
Mm.
my body has shut down, and then it's like, you know what? It's never about you. It's never your choice. It's whatever God has decided for you. So
Yeah.
I had to go through the emotions that I was feeling. I had to grieve that loss of freedom and all of that and what it meant for me. And I even went as far as putting myself in the shoes of the woman that was still hoping to have
Mm,
children. News what it does for them, because I didn't want to have children, but that discovery, it blew the sails out of my wings.
mm,
So that woman, how is she taking the news, especially if she does not even have children yet? If maybe she was still waiting for that ideal partner, waiting to get married, or waiting for the right everything before she could have children, suddenly she gets the news that, you know what, you're no longer going to be able to conceive naturally. And as people, also, we hardly speak about the other ways of having children. We always look at it like that you need to procreate in the natural way. We do not talk about the options like freezing our eggs. We are the generation that is putting off so many decisions, maybe because we're still chasing certain dreams, certain goals. We want to align this, we want to be able to be financially secure, you want to get married before you can have children. But we're not aware that as we get older, the quality of our eggs changes also. I know that
mm,
as people of faith, we always say that whatever God's plan is, will
yeah.
be. The truth of the matter is, though, at the same time, we live in this world where we get taught that as you get older, the quality of your eggs deteriorate. So you need to look at things like maybe freezing your eggs, so that if you decide that this is the time for me to now have babies, then you still have those optimum quality eggs available for you. We do not speak enough about things like surrogacy. What does it mean? How does it come to be accepted also? Because people that normally go through these things, they go through it in silence. They don't speak up about that. Things like your adoption, and also getting men to be part of these conversations also, because
Yeah.
I mean, conceiving children or babies is not just a woman's responsibility, but it
Yes.
leads to conversations with one's partner. And in one of the chapters, I've got open letters, whether to myself, to society, to the church. The church
Mm,
also has expectations when young couples get married at some point, that children, is almost in the next progression. But under
mm,
the same breath, the church is not having any of these menopause conversations, even during premarital conversations or premarital counseling. Menopause hardly gets brought up.
mm,
And menopause, I mean, most couples, it brings that strife in marriages or in relationships. And that's when some couples have either hit that snag, which leads them going to church to seek counseling. But then the church will approach this matter normally from the spiritual aspect, not taking into consideration, looking at maybe sometimes at the age of the woman, and think that maybe it can be menopause that it's rearing its head. Hence, the couple is going through all of these struggles. And then on the other end of the spectrum, then it can be a young couple where this young woman has gotten married, she hits premature menopause, and then it leads to infertility. And then their first point of solace, sometimes it can be, let us go to church to be prayed for or to get that support. But then you find that the church is not having these conversations. So they do not know how to be able to hold their hands during this phase of life. So infertility, it is a devastating, I think, experience to go through. And
yeah.
it is important that people that find themselves in that phase, they face it head on. They do not just bury their heads in the sand, but they look for
Mm,
the right support, go for counseling. They have open conversations with each other, and also remove the blame, because most women are quick to blame themselves whenever
mm,
infertility happens. They understand that they do not have to shoulder any blame, you know.
That's right. That's right. It's easy for you to take the blame and feel like there's something that is wrong with you, and yet you've actually not done anything really. And it's such a, that's why this topic is such a powerful topic to talk about, Toli. And again, thank you for this beautiful work that you are doing and you are advocating for, and you're pushing a narrative on, because it's something that we really need as society, particularly in this day and age. Toli, I want to talk about the resilience, in before I move into, the birthing of your purpose, of course, and how you realized that this was indeed where you needed to stand on and push the work. What were some of those moments where you knew, or where you stood and you knew that here it is not by might nor by power, but there is a certain power behind you backing you up? What were those conversations or those moments like? Do you have any mantras or scriptures or songs that kept you going and anchored in your faith?
Yes, 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 yes. Firstly, I can do all things through Christ. It was always the one that was like really trudging me on, especially when I knew what was happening, when I needed to find my voice to be able to advocate for myself at work, because during that time I was still working as a flight attendant, and there was no menopause conversations, there was no menopause policy, and I had told myself that I was not going to suffer in silence. I needed to be able to speak to my managers about what I was going through. And when I had gone into the dip of depression, I had to remember John 10, verse 10, that I
Mm,
always equated depression to the thief that had come to kill and destroy, because I almost took my own life, and then just knowing that this was a fight actually, and it's nothing that is new under the sun, which is another scripture that, I mean, everything has got its
mm,
own season. So I always knew
mm,
that everything that I was going through, it was meant for my greater good, and that I was still going to get to the other side. Life has got its own different seasons. There's a time for everything. So my affliction was like a pruning season. And that
mm,
I've always known that God has always said that he will never leave nor forsake me. I've
mm,
walked into spaces where I've had to speak with the voice of confidence, of authority, that I knew that was beyond me. So there is just so many scriptures that I will pick up from. And I also would say that music, Matima's Make a Way, right now Sinash's song Overflow is my go-to song. So yeah, faith has really been the foundation that carried me. And at the same time, I must say that I went through the phase where my faith was really taking. It got tested so much. I felt like I had moved away from God when I was in the deepest depths of depression, when I was contemplating about the value of life, the purpose of life, why we are here, and all of that. I touched on the book that I remember when I would feel like I always needed to cry, because there was this thing that was always in my chest that
mm,
I felt like I needed to offload. And
mm,
I told you that I love praise and worship. And when I'd be at
mm.
church, during praise and worship, and I'll be crying, my spirit always knew that it had nothing to do with being moved by the praise and worship or being in the Holy of Holies. I was just detached from God. I was going to church because it was a way of being, but I felt not in the same alignment with Him. But when I came to the other side, it was like a reunion with Him.
Yeah.
And it was such a beautiful place of being, knowing that, you know what, He carried me through this when I had moved away from Him, not through my own choice. And then when He had brought me through, and then it's like we understood so much in hindsight.
Wow. 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 Powerful, powerful, Collie. I absolutely love listening to you. You command such a voice with so much authority, and it's beautiful when you're explaining this journey. And I love what you're saying, that there was an alignment and a union that happened when you came out on the other side. Because I believe that the story and the journey of Xoli became the story and the journey of many women around the world, became a story of and journey of Tinashe. It became a story and journey of Authentically Women as an organization, because it is a hub for women, became a story and a journey for women everywhere. And I think that is what your life really represents at this point in time. And I want you to take us through that, because that began the birthing of your purpose, and how you moved from, you just saying, I'm going through this too. I'm an advocate for this. And I'm going to get into those workspaces and I'm going to tell them and I'm going to share what I carry and all that I've been through to help to bring change and transformation. How did that emerge, and why did you feel that it was important to start these conversations, particularly in the workspace?
I always say I always have conversations with God. And the moment I knew what I'd gone through, instead of asking like or wallowing in self-pity, or being shrouded with shame of having gone into premature menopause, I asked God, like, why did you allow me to go through this? Why did you choose me? And the answers were quite obvious. As I said, I believe that I'm here to live my truth. So he knew that if I've gone through it, I'm going to speak it the way that I experienced it. Hence, even in the book, there's chapters which I've titled TMI, too much information, because I really paint the picture for what it is. And also, I knew that I'm articulate enough, because that's another thing. One of the reasons that I've stated in the beginning of the book as to why I wrote it, I'm saying that I wanted the woman that is sitting somewhere struggling with whether it's perimenopause, or they are even on the other side, but they do not know how to paint the picture for themselves or for the loved ones or for whoever that they coexist with, that they can watch the video and get the aha moment, call their loved one or whoever to say that, come watch this. This is what I've been going through. When they read the book, they can nod in that relatability and say that this is exactly what I am going through. So I really needed to, firstly, have a conversation with God to say that, why did you allow me to go through this? And then he confirmed. And then I was like, okay, fine, we are going to do this. Always guide me. I always say that I'm a vessel. And people have said that even when I speak, sometimes they can see when it's no longer me who is talking. But it's like there is another force that has taken over. I just go into this zone. So he took me into a space of pruning. And during this space, I was able to amass so much knowledge, so much lived experience, also from other women, because he's giving me that thing that when I speak, people are able to actually remove their own masks, and then they share their stories. And they know that even if I was to retell their stories, I retell their stories from a place of dignity, of respecting their privacy if there is a need to do that. Because, as I say, not every woman is comfortable sharing personal experiences the way that some of us are able to. So this work that I do, obviously, it comes with that responsibility. So knowing that women were going through what I've gone through in silence, for me was like, I want to be the voice of change. I want to remove the shame for those that are not speaking about it due to shame, because others are not speaking about it just because they're private people, but others are not speaking about it due to the shame. Others are worried about the stigma. And also, I wanted to remove the myths. There are so many myths that are tied to this phase of life. Firstly, there's that belief that a woman has reached their sell by date, their shelf life when they've reached menopause. They just need to wither somewhere in a corner, and they cannot have new goals, new hobbies. If they're single, then they can almost give up on meeting that ideal partner for them. If they wanted to be mothers, they must throw that dream out of the window. And I'm saying that menopause is a phase of life. It's a rebirth, actually, because it brings you into your own itself all over again. Hence, even this word itself is tied with so much negativity. The moment people hear menopause, people go like, oh no, we don't want to talk about that. So seeing and hearing women's stories and having gone through what I went through, I said that I wanted also to be what I needed. I believe that if there had been a Xoli in the early 2010s or so, when my transition could have started, then I could have been able to connect the dots earlier and I would not have struggled the way that I struggled. So it is important that we have these menopause preparation conversations for women that still think that menopause is far off, but then they need to know as much as they can so that if they hit this phase of life or they start noticing changes, then they're able to sit up and say, okay, possibly I might be perimenopausal. And I also wanted to show men really in the truest sense as to what menopause looks like, because sometimes some women feel like they cannot speak to their partners as openly as they should because they feel like maybe their partner might see them in a lesser way, they might no longer be interested in them, so then they hide some of their struggles. And even research has confirmed that 1 out of 5 women will hide their menopause struggles at home or from their partners.
Sure, sure, sure. That's deep. Sorry, I'm stopping you. Are you done? That is deep. Yeah, that is very deep.
I'm stopping myself because, as I said, that this topic is so close to my heart that I can go on talking and on and on. So I need to remind myself that this is a conversation. You need to stop. You need to allow Tina to be able to get in.
No, you are actually touching on all the major and important points. So I love it when you just continue sharing like that. And for me, it really it pains my heart to hear that women have to hide this from their husbands, because of the stigma, of course, that comes with
Yeah.
menopause. Like you say, that just from hearing the name menopause, people want to run away, shy away, hide. We can't talk about this yet. It's something we need to really start talking about, particularly in the churches, in our community, in society, and teaching our young girls as well, about these
Yeah.
things. And
Boys.
you know and boys as well. Thank you, because I see you also, you spoke about men having to be a part of these conversations, and I like that, Polly, because in the next season, or rather where we're going, as a people, is a place and a space where women and men really need to start coming together and sharing stories together. It's no longer about women motivation or going to events or men doing their own thing, but rather all of us coming together to bring change, and effect transformation if we have to. It's time really that we come to that place of reconciliation and understanding who we are in truth and in transparency. We absolutely love you, sis. We love your spirit. We love your work and everything that you are on about. May these lemons continue to be turned into lemonade, is indeed, just as you say in your book. I just want to take this time to really thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and the work of purpose that you do to come and share with us on this platform. I, for one, have been changed and transformed. I've been moved. I've had aha moments. I was just soaking in and soaking in and soaking in. And next year, we want you back for something else, even more stuff. We will touch base definitely. But maybe for now, this is it. Again, thank you so much to the Faith in Action podcast listeners and watchers. This was yet another exciting episode with Xolisile Madlala. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She is a firm advocate of menopause, premature menopause, perimenopause. She talks menopause, she talks diversity and inclusion, and she has managed to turn her pain into purpose and power. What an absolute gem. What a rare, rare breed indeed. The voice that is needed in this particular age and time, and really seeing that faith coming into action, in its truest form. Golly, thank you once again. And to the listeners and watchers, till we meet again next time, it's goodbye for now. Please stay on the line, Golly. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Tinashe Mujera. I'm an author, I'm a marketplace professional, and I'm a woman of God. I am a representation of tested faith. I represent my healed wounds that left ugly scars. This is the Faith in Action podcast that has been created to help you find the journey to your true self through conversations and lessons shared.